Buongiorno, buona sera a tutti e benvenuti alla chiesa di San Giovanni Evangelista in Alessandria. That's about all you're getting from my Italian for today. I did learn Italian a long time ago in school, but apart from going on holiday, that's about it. Pizza and pasta, and I can just about order myself a glass of wine, and that's about it. So there we are. Yeah, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know, my name is Fraser Gartshore, and on this channel we talk about organs and organ music. So if you haven't been here before, stick around and you'll learn something rather exciting about the wonderful, freaky world of organs and organ music. So, now, as promised in a previous video, I'm going to introduce you to a brand new organ today, and using my provisional organ console here at home via the wonder that is known as software Hauptwerk, which is a sort of a MIDI controlled organ sampling playing software. Does that make sense? Yeah, well, I will in a minute. And I promised you that I would introduce you to a new organ. Now, this is a rather magnificent instrument. There's a picture of it on my screen here. I will put a proper picture of it up once I've worked out how to do that and get it pasted in. So yes, and this is an instrument that was sampled recently by a young chap from Poland whose name is Piotr Grabowski. And he's been creating sample sets for organs for rather a long time, since he was a student. That's when he sort of started out, and he's gone on to sample some rather wonderful instruments from throughout Europe, and some of them are available for free on his website, and others are not available for free on his website. But Piotr got in touch with me recently and offered me as a gift some of his sampled organs, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you very, very much for that. I'm very honored that you would consider doing that. And as a thank you, of course, I'm going to introduce the world to his organs. Now, some of his organs have been presented on other YouTube organ channels, and they are becoming very, very popular. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to this organ as if we were actually sitting in the church. Now, normally on my channel, we do sort of travel around the place, visit new organs and demonstrate what they can do. But of course, you know what's been happening for the last 18 months or so, so it's quite difficult to do that at the moment. So we're sort of confined to the comforts of our homes, as it were. And thanks to this wonderful software and these sampled instruments, I can still show you some new instruments. So here it is. This is this wonderful new instrument from a church in Alessandria in northern Italy. It's by the Italian organ builder Mascioni, and it's an I think originally it's 45 stops, but Piotr has enlarged it somewhat digitally to come up with some other flavors, which is rather exciting. And if you sort of see, this is a picture of the organ in the church. It's sort of tucked away in the corner on one of the transepts, and it sort of fills the space rather nicely, but obviously it can't take up too much room because there are, as is normal in some of these Italian churches, some rather beautiful artwork on the walls, and that mustn't be covered up. So we'll come to that in a minute because that's quite important. There are a couple of stops in there that are quite important, and that's got something to do with the size of the organ. Now, if you're interested in this yourself, then I suggest you go and visit Grabowski's website. It's a wonderfully laid out, simple to use website. It's very good. A lot better than some other sort of organ sample set websites, I must say. It's very professional. And here sort of Piotr introduces you to his instruments in a very sort of easy way. Oops, if I just click on that once, not twice. So a nice list of all his instruments, the new ones, and there are some new ones coming up, which is rather exciting. So I'm hoping I'm going to get my hands on those as well sometime soon so that I can show you them. Now, this is very, very exciting stuff. So this instrument is then obviously downloaded to your computer, and then through the wonders of Hauptwerk software, you can then install and load this organ. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to take you through the process of how this works. Now, it is a rather sort of long-winded, laborious process, but for a good reason. So I'm going to press some buttons now and show you how we get an organ into Hauptwerk and how we can finally start playing it. Bear with me, it is worth it. And there's going to be some music later on, of course, showing you what the organ can really do. And believe me, there are some very exciting features on this organ, including one stop that will blow your mind. So when you open up Hauptwerk for the first time, you're greeted with a blank screen. And then, of course, you obviously have to sort of tell the software what you want to do. Now, you can install, like I say, as many organs as your hard disk can cope with. And the only limitations really are the amount of RAM you have on your computer, because these things, you know, we're talking individually sampled pipes from an organ. Now, an organ can have well over 10,000 pipes, yeah? And in addition to that, we have the acoustic sound, we have the attack and release sound of the pipes, we have the mechanical sounds of the organs, we have the wind sound of the organs, there are all sorts of things going on in the background there. So all of these samples put together, they are incredibly RAM intensive. And the designers of these sample sets have thought of that, and they've sort of given you various options when you load an organ. So if I tell my system I want to load an organ, you get this menu here. And there are quite a few things in there. Now, I've only actually got 3 organs that I have installed myself here. The rest of them belong to Hauptwerk itself. 3 of them are for testing Hauptwerk. Once you've got your hardware set up, you have to sort of let the software know how advanced your hardware is and what it's capable of. So there are testing organs that take care of that. There is one organ that comes free with Hauptwerk itself. It's a little English organ from Liverpool, from Moseley, from a church called St. Anne's. It's a rather cute little instrument, and I will probably demonstrate that at some point as well, just because it really is rather cute. And then there are the 3 organs that I, like I say, have installed. Fraser, which is also one of Grabowski's sample sets. It's one of his free sample sets, and it's a great instrument. It's pretty much everything you need, to be honest, but like, you know, collectors of anything, whether you collect old cars, old watches, whether you collect, I don't know, boats, stamps, pieces of wood, shells, colored stones, I don't know, people collect things, yeah, and organists obviously want to collect organs, and thanks to Hauptwerk that is now possible. So on here I have this Fraser instrument, I have a cinema organ. Yes, we can sample cinema organs as well. Check out that video. There's a cinema organ that we sampled, or got sampled. And then, of course, now I have Alessandria. Now, I've already installed it, and that's a very long, laborious process to do that. That takes forever. But if I want to load it into my system, I am greeted with a lot of options. Now, this is quite a screen. I'm not going to show you this in great detail because it's not all that exciting. I'll just sort of explain it to you a little bit. Now, if I make that a bit bigger and I sort of scroll up and down here, you see 168 individual items that can be loaded into the software to be played. Now, they're sort of divided up into various sample sets within themselves, shall we say. So the organ in the church was sampled 3 times separately. Each time as a stereo sample set, so let's not worry too much about that, but we've got 3 stereo samples, so that means we've theoretically got 6 channels of organ sound available to us. Now, if your computer is running with 120 gigabytes of RAM and it's the most modern, all singing or dancing machine, then you can just load up everything and not worry about it. Now, this is a 2017 iMac, and it's got 48 gigs of RAM on it, which is not a huge amount, but it's enough. But it does mean that I'm slightly limited with this instrument. I can't load every single sample on here at full bit depth, because that will just basically blow up my RAM. So that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do, I'm only going to load part of the samples. And I have 3 different samples to choose from. I have samples that were taken very close to the pipes. The mics were sort of set up close to the pipes of the organ while they were being sampled. So those are the close samples. I then have front samples, so they were taken from, let's say, somewhere near the organ in the church, so you're getting more of the acoustic, you're getting a good balance of church and organ. And then there are rear samples, and I'm not sure if they're rear facing samples or if they were just taken from further back in the church. I can't find that anywhere, so maybe someone can tell me, or Piotr, maybe you can tell me what exactly that was. The rear, and of course they are very acoustic based, yeah, so you've got the full sound of the church, the organ sounds more distant there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up just the front samples. Now, what I'm going to do first of all, I'm just going to select everything that's there and tell Hauptwerk, no, I don't want to load everything. So that's quite important, otherwise it'll start loading hundreds of other things. And now I will select the, let me see, the 56 separate front samples. Now think about it, this organ has 45 stops and we have 56 samples here. So there are all sorts of other things going on in the background, noises, key action noises and so on, release, attack, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to choose the 56 front samples and say yes. Now when I say yes, I'm greeted with this part of the screen which lets me sort of choose how I want to load these things. Now obviously I want them in stereo. Bit depth, I have the selection between 16, 20 or 24-bit samples. Now my system is fast enough, I have tested this out, so I'm going to go for the full bit depth, 24 samples. They are 32-bit aligned, which is rather exciting. We'll come to that in a minute when we talk about recording. And now I have memory compression. So if I was slightly limited in the RAM department, I can compress the files ever so slightly. It says lossless. But if I go for uncompressed, it will take up more memory, obviously, but I will have slightly more polyphony. That means I can play more samples at the same time. So if I have all the stops pulled out and I'm playing huge chords using my arms and elbows and things, then I won't run out of disk space, as it were, or RAM space. Now, attack and sustain samples. There are various options there. I'm going to choose all available, take everything, and do the same for the multiple sample loops and the release samples, load all available. And then I'm going to click OK, and this is going to take quite a while to load. Back in a minute. Ta-da! After 4 or 5 minutes, we finally have an organ on the screen. Now, that will of course be faster if you have a more modern machine with fancy SSD or NVMe drives and all that sort of stuff. It will be a lot faster. And I think in the future, rather than invest thousands in a new machine here, I'm just going to upgrade the RAM and the hard disk on this machine here, because the processor is not the problem when it comes to a Hauptwerk. It's definitely sort of RAM and disk speed. So I'm probably going to upgrade those at some point, but it's not necessary. You know, we've got time, and thanks to the magic of editing, I can just bring you straight in. So here we have the organ on the screen. And the first thing you see is sort of a whole battery of organ stops that you can, using a mouse, switch on and off. If I had a touch screen, I could do it like that. That would be very useful. I will probably also be investing in a touch screen at some point. You get a sort of depiction of the console itself with its 3 manuals. Now I've already set up my lower 3 manuals to correspond to those 3 manuals. That's just basically a click of a mouse and it's done, and the same of course down here with the pedals. The one thing I don't have at the moment installed, I do actually have them physically, they're sitting over there, are some swell pedals. That's these chaps here. They control the volume of certain parts of the organ. We'll get to that when we get to it. And I just don't have them physically installed yet. I need to sort of have a sort of little addition to my pedal board down there so I can get the swell pedals fixed to that and then start using them. I've already tested them out. I know they work perfectly. It's just I can't physically get them connected yet, but we're getting there, slowly but surely. And then there are sort of other bits and bobs connected with it here. Down at the bottom, I have a sort of list of little registration possibilities. And what I've done, I've used my 4th manual to control that. And what I can do, I can save different combinations. If you look here, the stops lighting up as I press this key. You can see different sort of combinations of stops lighting up and switching off and things like that. So I've set up some combinations of stops. That makes it easier. And I can control those using these 2 keys here. Excuse me, or I've done the same with a pedal down there. So that's rather clever. And I can control these using these 2 keys here on my upper manual, or one of the pedals that I have sacrificed for the job. And obviously, of course, when I get my swell pedals installed, I will be installing some other sort of controls, either like little buttons like this you would see under the manuals here to control them, or I can sort of press them with one of my feet just to sort of move through those things. So there I have my controls. That's quite simple, actually. Once you get into the software, everything becomes really rather easy. It's getting in there that's the problem. Right then, so all of that kerfuffle to get this thing set up. It's now finally time to start playing the organ, and I somehow need to be able to hear what I'm doing. So normally I would have a wonderful surround sound system here with 110 speakers and whatever else, subwoofers and goodness knows vibrating things under my seat so I get the full feel of the bass and all that sort of stuff. It's all possible, of course. Your imagination will dictate how far you want to go. No, I don't have any of that yet. This is not the final resting place of this instrument. It will be moving upstairs to what's going to be my music room, so once it's finished. So this is only its test environment at the moment. So I don't have any speakers installed at the moment, so I am limited to these, my rather wonderful biodynamic headphones. I'm not advertising these, but they are absolutely brilliant. They're studio quality headphones, the DT770 Pro. They're absolutely wonderful. They pick up everything an organ needs to play, right down to the very deepest bass sounds, all the way up to the sort of the maximum hearing range of a 48-year-old European male, in other words, me. So younger people will hear better and whatever. But humans are limited from between 20 to 20,000 hertz anyway, and I don't believe anyone who says they can hear anything above that, because it's physically not possible. Even the youngest people can't really hear over 20,000 hertz. So if you think you can, you're lying. Anyway, never mind, that's another story. So you, however, need to be able to hear what I'm doing here. So I need to get the sound out of the system into my editing software. How am I going to do that? Well, I could do it via various music interfaces, and oh goodness me, it would take forever to do it. But thankfully Hauptwerk has its own built-in solution for that, and it's rather clever. It has its own sort of built-in DAW, as it were, so you can record what's going on. Now, to activate that, thankfully I have my old iPad here connected up to the system via the Duet software, and I can go to, via the view menu, the large floating control panels for this organ. I can select where is it? Yes, the recorder player, and I can whiz that over, thank you, to my iPad. And now I have the sort of transport controls for recording what I'm doing here. So it's a lot simpler than the rest of the setup so far, but it works perfectly. And that creates both a MIDI and a wave file of what we have been playing, or what I have been playing. So I can then import that into my editing software and line it all up, and we're good to go. It's as simple as that. It really is very good. And because we are working in the modern digital world, I can actually create 32-bit audio files, which have the maximum bit depth, of course, the maximum dynamic range, are completely flawless and are great to work with. We will be doing a video in the future about things like sample rates and bit depth. There are all sorts of myths out there about certain things. Now, when you're dealing with audio, there are only a couple of things you really need to worry about. And people go overboard with sort of 192 kilohertz recordings. And it's just not necessary. Not for audio. It's not necessary for audio. So we'll get to that at some point. So now we are finally ready to get playing this instrument. Hope you're still listening. Headphones on, recorder ready. What I'm going to do, because I need to sync this up, so I'm going to switch on one stop. I'm going to press record. The screen will flash. I need to switch that on again, obviously, because it starts from scratch. So I need to tell it I'm switching on this stop, and I'm going to play the 3 chords. Okay, so I can now sync that up with my sound. I'm just going to let that run now, and that will do its thing. So let's have a look at this wonderful instrument here. Now, it's a very versatile, modern organ that's sort of voiced to be able to play every kind of organ music. It's rather wonderful. There are Baroque sounding stops on there are modern sounding stops, there are French sounding stops, there's even British sounding stops, and then I suppose a bunch of Italian sounding stops too, because it's an Italian organ. Now, remember back to the beginning, I said pay attention to the shape of the organ itself in the church and its position. Now, obviously, organ pipes take up some space, so the organ builders came up with a couple of rather clever solutions to cheat on space. We'll come to that in a moment. Now, if you don't know anything about organs and organ pipes, there are basically sort of a few separate families of pipes, and we're going to look at those on this organ, which is rather well laid out and clever. Now, the stops I have here, on the very left I have the great manual, that's the grande organo as it's called here, so that's that here, the bottom manual. I then have the positivo, those are the stops here on the second manual, and then I have the recitativo espressivo. Oh, sounds so beautiful in Italian, doesn't it? That's my third manual, and that's the one that I should be able to control with my swell pedal, which I don't have installed, so I can maybe cheat and use the mouse here for now. And then on the far right I have the pedal stops. Those are the ones I play with my feet. So I'm not going to go through all the stops individually because that would take forever. I'm just going to go through a couple of families of stops. Now, let's start with the string sounds. Now, an organ has, like I say, various families of stops, and one of those imitates string sounds. Here's one called a gamba, and this is a sort of quite a thin, soft sound, rather nice actually. That's a rather nice sound, isn't it? Now, on the second manual, there isn't a string sound, but up on the third manual, there are some rather clever string sounds. There's one on its own, sounds similar to what we just had there, a little softer. Oh. That's called the salicionale. That's beautiful on its own. Now, I can add to that something called a voce celeste, which is a deliberately out of tune stop to give a sort of nice undulating effect. Same thing. Ooh, that's a rather nice effect. Now, if I take my swell pedal here and shut it down, first of all, you can hear it banging closed. Those are shutters at the front of a box in which the pipes have been enclosed. And now I have a sort of a very soft sound because the pipes they can't speak freely. They're boxed in, literally. Now, if I continue playing while I open that box, you can hear what's going on. This is quite difficult doing it with the hand. But you get the idea. Now, I'm letting the acoustics of the church run at the same time there, so you get the full effect. You can also hear, if you listen very carefully, I suggest you go and get some headphones or some good speakers while you're listening to this video. You can actually hear this blower noise, the air moving around within the organ, which is pretty clever. Now, to add to that stringy effect, I can add an octave lower at the same time. So I'm now playing 2 octaves at the same time, and that gives a very, very sort of fat sound. That's a beautiful sound, isn't it? I love that. So that's our string selection from this organ. Now there's a family of things called flutes, and every division has its own flutes, and it starts on the grande organo again with the flauto doppio. That's a double flute, obviously. It's a harmonic flute, so it's an overblown flute like you would find in an orchestra. And there's that acoustic again. Now there's a flute at 4-foot pitch, a flauto at 4-foot pitch, which is an octave higher. And those together sound like this. Which is a very cute sound. Now, there are different flutes in different divisions. On the positive, I have something called a flauto a camino, chimney flute. And it's a different shape of pipe, and it produces a slightly different sound. I'm on the second manual now. And you can sort of hear that it's a more metallic sound. It's rather clever, isn't it? There is that flauto a cuspide, which sounds beautiful. No idea what it means, but it sounds absolutely beautiful. That's an octave higher again, and it's rather cute. Which is very cute, isn't it? Then there's something called a 12th, flauto in versus 12, dodici. So flauto in dodici, and that's playing at a different pitch. So when I play a C, it's sounding a G. Why would you want that? Further up it sounds better. Cute, isn't it? And then we have a terza, which is 1 3/5, and what that does when I play a C, it plays an E. So I'm now playing 3 different notes. With my 1 C, I'm playing an E and a G, and at 2 Cs at 2 different octaves. And that gives a sort of very fruity flavour. If I remove the 4-foot from that combination, it sounds like a clarinet. Quite clever, isn't it? So those are my flutes on this manual. I now bump up to the third manual where we have 3 different flutes. Actually, I think we have more, but no, we only have 3. We have a corno di notte, which is a night flute, an evening flute. Why would you have an evening flute? That's from the German name Nachthorn. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So here it is. That's a very plain sound. It has an octave variant, a flauto octaviante. I'm not very good at Italian, am I? So 8 and 4 sounds like this. Which is very cute. And then we have a 2-foot flute, a flautino, a little flute on top of that. Isn't that cute? Which is a very cute little sound. 8, 4 and 2. So those are our flutes that we have there. Now, I'm going to talk about the pedals separately when we get to them later. Let's talk very briefly about the principal sounds, or in Italian, the principale. These are the principal or the diapason sounds that you would find on any normal organ, And here we have an 8, 4 and 2 principal chorus on the great. It also has a 16-foot principal to beef that up a bit. And now we can start adding these sort of in-between sounds again. So I have another 12, the duodecima, as it's called here, another 2 and 2/3, to give a bit of beef in the middle. And then something called a ripieno, which means full, basically. And it's a full-sized mixture of different pipes at different pitches to give a very clear, crisp sound. That's pretty good, isn't it? So that's my principal chorus on the great manual. Now I have the same thing here on the second manual, principale 8, and then an octave and a ottavina, a little octave. So 8, 4 and 2, and they sound like this. So it's a much softer sounding principal chorus here. I have something called a cembalo, which is a little mixture. It's only sort of two ranks of pipes sounding at the same time, but it adds a bit of color. Nice. So up in the third manual, I don't have a principal chorus. I do have a principale at 8-foot bass, which is a rather lovely, fat sounding principal. That's almost bordering on a French style montre. That's a sort of a different sounding principal sound that you might find on a French romantic organ. Now, that's it on the third manual for the principal stuff, but I can build up a chorus here using my flutes 8, 4 and 2. And then I have a French mixture called a plein jeu, and that's a 3 to 5 rank mixture, and that really brightens things up. Sounds like this. So there I have 3 different principal choruses up to mixtures. They sound like this. Here's the third, second, first. And that's just a handful of stops. That's a pretty good sound already, isn't it? Let's cancel all of that. Now we have a different family of things called the reed stops, and there are some rather lovely reeds in this organ. There's something called a cromorno, which is a crumhorn, or I don't know what you'd describe that as in the real world, but it's a sort of it's a mix between an oboe and a clarinet, I suppose. Sounds like this. That's a sort of cheeky sound. I rather like that. Up in the upper manual, there's a solo thing called an oboe, which, does it sound like an oboe? Not an orchestral oboe, an organ oboe. Okay, and then we have a typical organ reeds, trumpets, and then we have a tromba here on the grate, and this is a nice sort of buzzy, bombastic sounding thing. And it comes with a 16-foot variant called the tromba 16-foot, which is it's obviously an octave lower, and it just really beefs things up. And you can hear them really singing through the acoustic of the church. Now, on the second manual, we only have that cromorno, but up here on the third manual, I have a tromba armonica, which is a harmonic trumpet, obviously, and this is a very French-style snappy trumpet. Which is really cool. It comes with a 4-foot clarone, so an octave higher. What it doesn't have, and now we start talking about space saving, what it doesn't have is a 16-foot reed, but it has a 16-foot reed effect, and this is something rather clever. This is a terziana, it's a mixture of stops. There are 4 ranks built into this mixture, and it's based on a fifth. So the lowest note is not a C, the lowest note is a G, but if I play the lowest note here, you hear all sorts of weird stuff. Now that sounds really weird, isn't it? If I play higher up here, it sort of has a nasal sound to it, but you can kind of hear it lower than it should be. So if I add to this, actually let's do it the other way around. Here's my 8-foot trumpet again. Now I add this terziana, you will hear an acoustic, a bit of acoustic foolery, I suppose you could say. It's cheating your ears into thinking that there's something playing the octave lower at the same time. So if I put on my 8 and 4-foot reeds and this terziana thing, it suddenly sounds like I have 16 8 and 4-foot reeds. That's clever, isn't it? That's really clever. Now, this isn't something new. Organ builders have been doing this for centuries. They've been sort of using harmonic principles. They really understood this from an early time. You know, Hammond organ players out there will be laughing at the moment, saying, "Yeah, but we've got drawbars. We can do that too." Well, that's true. You can. You can do these things with drawbars, but don't forget Hammond got that from somewhere else, and he got that from older organ builders who've been doing this for centuries. So they knew how to sort of create or recreate sounds harmonically by just adding pitches from the harmonic series at different sort of relations to each other to get different effects. Isn't that clever? So now if I pop on pretty much all of the swell stops here, I can close the box again and I get this really big fat swell sound. That's incredibly authentic, isn't it? It's really very clever. Not bad. Now, I'm not going to go into combining all of these stops together. That would take forever, but you get the idea. I can really sort of play around with these things. Down in the pedals, we have principal sounding pedals at 16, 8, and 4. Which are great big bass sounding things. I have the same thing at 16 and 8, but on a flute basis, so a sub basso 16 and a flauto 8. So of course much softer. If I combine those sounds, I get a big fat bass sound. And this is, again, the wonders of this Hauptwerk software. If you leave the notes on long enough, you can sort of feel the samples getting bigger and filling the church. It's very clever. This is where it takes up all the RAM. Now, some organs have something called a 32-foot stop, which is an octave lower, and the lowest sounds there go all the way down to 16 hertz, basically. So they're not really audible for human ears, but you feel them rumbling about. Now, this organ, again, for space reasons, didn't have space for a 32-foot stop. Imagine 32 foot, that's like 10 meters. So it didn't have space for that. So again, we have a harmonic effect here, and by combining a low C with a G above it, a fifth above it, we can create a resultant bass effect. So here, just by adding one stop, a quinta at 10 2/3, I can recreate the sound of a 32-foot rumbling in the background. That's clever. Now, down on the pedals, I obviously have some reed stops, and these are the big guns of an organ. The Bombarda 16-foot, which is really rather big. Now, that's on its own pretty big. There's a softer 16-foot reed, a controfagotto, which has a much thinner sound, and that comes at a variety of pitches that aren't actually available in the real organ, but they've been added to this one, 16, 8 and 4. Now that gives a big sort of sound. It's not quite like a mixture there, but if I add the other pedal stops around that, I'm deliberately leaving off the big guns, the bombards, but that's the 16, 8 and 4 fagotto, and my other principal sounds and fluty sounds, including that 32-foot resultant effect. This is where every organist in the world, male, female or otherwise, at any age, they all suddenly turn into sort of a 10-year-old child who's just discovered something exciting for the first time. I won't tell you what, but anyway, yeah, so when you start playing with the deep pedal stuff, we all get very excited. I guess it's the harmonics doing things with our innards. Something deep in the base of our spine is reacting in a funny way. So if I add the Bombard 16-foot to that, that's a big sound. Now that's as big as the sound is of the actual organ in the actual church itself. And Mr. Grabowski thought, nah, that's not big enough, we need more than that. So he added a 32-foot reed, a 32-foot bombarda. So that's an octave lower than the one we've just heard. And that is absolutely bombastic, funnily enough. Sounds like this. Here's the lowest scale. And in the background, you can actually hear some of the woodwork of the church shaking around. Isn't that wonderful? Ah, absolutely brilliant. Now, I did promise you there's a stop on this organ that is rather exciting. It's completely over the top, and I love it to bits. It's called a tuba, and in the real organ, it's only available on the grate and the pedals, but here it's available everywhere, which is great. Sorry, that was an organ joke. But to play it, you don't just switch it on because there's nothing there. You have to switch on an extra engine, an extra motor for an extra blower. And down here at the very bottom left, it says Motore Tuba. And if I click on that, listen carefully. You hear a lot more air flowing about the place now. This is a high pressure reed, and they decided to sample the high pressure air sound of it. It's quite bizarre, but absolutely wonderful. And when you suddenly now play the tuba, you get blown away. And of course that completely fills the church with the sound. That's a huge sound. Big brass sound. It's so big, in fact, it cuts through the entire organ. So if I now build myself a full organ. I won't go overboard and put absolutely everything on, but I'll just put the big stuff on. Couple everything together, obviously. What do I want? I suppose I want, nah, I don't want that. Let's couple all that together. I suppose I might as well put the big stuff on up here on the swell, and I better get the old pedals going here. So let's recreate a big, 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 big sound. Couple everything down. Now this is just the organ, full organ as it were. It's already a wonderful sound. Now if I add the tuba to the second manual, the tuba will actually cut through the full organ. Listen to this. That really is mind-blowing. It's absolutely amazing. So, there you are. Some of the stops and some of the effects of this rather wonderful Mascioni instrument in Alessandria, beautifully sampled and recreated by Piotr Grabowski and his team of gurus when it comes to sample sets. So, wow, thanks guys. That's rather amazing. Let's put all that together in a piece of music. Right, so what I'm going to do, I've saved up some combinations of stops here, including the tuba when it gets really loud, which is just absolutely wonderful, great fun. And I'm just going to sort of improvise a little number for you, demonstrating some of the different colors you can get out of this organ. So we're building up from some nice gentle stops all the way up to full organ and then back down again. So it's the kind of thing I love doing. It's an old sort of British tradition, I suppose you could say. And although I've lived in Germany for 21 years now, I still can't get away from it. And when you're faced with an organ like this, you sort of can't resist doing it. It's the most natural thing you can do. So here we go, a little improvised number featuring the wonderful Mascioni organ here in Alessandria. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's the kid in the candy store thing, isn't it? And like I say, I still don't have the complete features of this sort of built into my own instrument yet. So once I've got that, there will be literally no stopping me. I absolutely adore what you can do with these possibilities from Hauptwerk and your own sort of MIDI instrument there. It's almost too much to be true, really. So big thank you, of course, to Piotr Grabowski and his team for donating this wonderful organ to the channel. And I will be featuring this instrument a lot more in future videos and also in extra videos. Now, Piotr was very kind to donate this instrument to the channel, and other people have also been donating towards the channel, and you can be part of that family as well. You can join us on Patreon or YouTube membership itself, be, like I say, part of a sort of a supporting family there. Now, there's quite a lot of work still to be done on this instrument itself. I can't imagine that other providers of sample sets are going to be as generous as Mr. Grabowski and donate organs to the cause. Actually, one other chap has donated another organ, a German organ, to the channel, and I will be demonstrating that very soon as well. So thank you in advance for that. But yeah, in the future, of course, we will be expanding and adding instruments to this wonderful collection, and yeah, you can be part of that family. Let's call it the Patreon family. That's easier to say at the moment. And you will be rewarded with extra videos, with early access to some new videos, with the occasional live stream event for members only, where we sort of talk about organ music, where I will do little concerts for you, of course, from the comfort of this wonderful new instrument. And if I can get the internet connection to work well enough, even from the church or for other organs we visit, all depends, of course, on internet connections. And I even have one level of membership on offer where I offer online tuition, online music tuition. And I have a couple of students already around the world. That's the fun of it. And now that I have this set up, I can actually use this. So last weekend, I had my first online lesson with my chap in Canada. I won't name names, but he's a great fun guy, and he really is a talented musician, wonderful piano player in the past, and he's been teaching himself organ up to now, and he wanted a few sort of hints and tips and pointers, so I've been helping him out with quite a lot of repertoire so far. And he has just also installed his own sort of digital organ sample MIDI hardware thingy, and we both tried ours out together for the first time a couple of weeks ago in our online lesson, and it worked absolutely perfectly. So if you're interested in something like that, then check that out on the Patreon website. Maybe that's something for you. Those places are limited, by the way, because obviously I can't spread myself around too much to be teaching all day every day. It would be fun, but I just quite simply don't have the time for too many. So I think it's limited to 15 students. So if that's something you'd be interested in, then feel free. We don't have to do organ, we can do piano tuition as well if you want. It's all possible. So anyway, so that's definitely something. If you're interested in hearing more of these instruments and getting more exclusive content, then think about joining up. It will be definitely worthwhile. Everything that comes in from those supporting channels, by the way, is reinvested into the channel in some way. So either in hardware for the new organ, maybe even software for the new organ, and also, of course, technical stuff for the recordings themselves. Don't worry, we will still be going out and about to visit real organs. We're still in a kind of corona lockdown at the moment here in Germany, so that's sort of slowing us down a bit, but as soon as that's lifted, we'll be back out and about visiting real organs. So then we will have the true luxury of out and about organs, this organ here, and everything in between. So it's all very exciting. The future of the channel is more than guaranteed, and I kind of hope you're going to be part of that family and join us on the journey. Don't worry if you're not interested in that, there will still be plenty of content coming up here. And we recently hit the 35,000 subscriber mark, and I kind of thought, let's see if we can, I'm just going to push you forwards here. If we hit 50,000 by Easter, now that's less than a month, that's probably not going to happen, but push it, folks. See if we can get it done. If we hit 50,000 by Easter, I will play Widor's Toccata on this wonderful instrument. So, up to you. If we don't get 50,000, I'll play something else for Easter. So don't worry, there will be something there. But if you want to hear Widor's Toccata on this magnificent thing, let's get it up to 50,000 subscribers and see if we can push it. That would be amazing. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope that wasn't too in-depth and too boring at the beginning for you there, but I wanted to show you how sophisticated this piece of software is. And it is, like I say, rather long-winded to get going, but once you're in, the possibilities are almost endless. So a rather wonderful piece of kit indeed. Once again, thanks to Piotr Grabowski and the guys over at his sample set team. Check out his website. All the links are down there below. You can, of course, purchase some of his instruments. They are absolutely wonderful, well worth it. And I'm not saying that because he's paying me to say that. I'm saying that because I genuinely believe that. They are wonderful. We will be introducing more of his instruments here on the channel in the near future. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again very soon. But bye-bye.